Okay, write the domain of each function in interval notation. When you're talking about domain, remember we can't divide by 0, and in our class we can't take square root of a negative number. So that means this whole thing that's under that radical has got to be 0 or larger. So what you do is you take the 1 minus x, set it greater than or equal to 0, because we can take the square root of 0. So now it doesn't matter how you do this. I'm just going to work it taking the 1 to the other side. It becomes negative. So I have negative x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Divide by negative 1, and I get x is less than or equal to 1. This has to change directions because we're dividing by a negative. So now, if you put this on a number line, here's 1. It's going to be a closed circle because it's equal to it. And it's anything less than, so it goes this direction. In interval notation, always start with the smallest one first, which is negative infinity, to a positive 1, and because that is filled in, it's going to be a bracket. Right here, this is just a polynomial. So a polynomial, there's no restrictions. We're not dividing by 0, and we're not taking square roots. So our domain is negative infinity to infinity. Sorry about the background noise if you guys can hear that. Okay, so it's negative, all real numbers, negative infinity to infinity. Right here on C, it is possible to end up with 0 in our denominator. So what you do is you take that denominator and set it equal to 0 and take the 8 to the other side. So x cannot equal negative 8, because if it does, it gives us 0. Now, put that on a number line. It can be anything but negative 8. So at negative 8, I'm going to put an open circle. Okay? So now, when I'm doing interval notation, okay, here, to do this to the left of negative 8, to put that in interval notation, it's parentheses, negative infinity to negative 8, and that's going to be a parenthesis because I can't include it. So that takes care of everything to the left. Now take everything to the right, just put a union here. I'm going to start with 8 and use a parenthesis because it's not included, and I'm going to go to infinity. Right here, exponential problem. We talked about this the other day. In exponentials, our x can be anything, so it is all real numbers. For E, in logarithms, hold on, I've got my paper all messed up here. With logarithms, we cannot take a logarithm of 0 or negative numbers. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to make it greater than 0 because it has to be a positive number. It can't even be 0. So take 3 to the other side, it becomes negative. So you have x is greater than negative 3. Number line, negative infinity on the left, negative 3 right here, and infinity right there. Okay, because it cannot be negative 3, we're going to make an open circle. This says all values greater than that, so it's going this direction. Now all you have to do is put it in interval notation. Because it's not included, it's a parenthesis. Negative 3 is our smallest number because you read it left to right, and it goes towards infinity in parentheses. Same thing here, okay? Doesn't matter about our base. It matters with this, okay? This cannot be 0, and it cannot be a negative number, because what you're doing is you're saying 2 to the what power is going to give you whatever number that is, okay? There isn't a number exponent that you can raise 2 to get a negative number or a 0 right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say x squared is greater than 1. I'm sorry, x squared minus 1 is greater than 0. Okay, so, whoops, let me make my number line a little bit longer because I need negative, oh, oops. Okay, sorry, I skipped ahead. Again, this really doesn't matter. We need to know, well, it does, but we need our critical points. That would be x plus 1, x minus 1. So right here, it's a negative 1. Here, it's positive 1. Now, we're going to have open circles because they can't equal 0. If we had close, if x was negative 1 in here or 1, it would give us 0. And we can't take, there's 2 to no power is going to give us 0. Okay? All right, so now you got to take your test points. So let's say pick a point to the left of negative 1. I'm going to pick negative 2. Pick a value between those two. I'm always going to pick 0. And pick a net value to the right. I'll just use 3. Okay, that just so happened to be what I used on my answers. I didn't really realize it. And what I'm going to do is plug it in right here. I am going to say my x, which in this case is going to be negative 2. I'm going to say negative 2 squared minus 1. And if it is true, if it and these values work, it'll give us a number that's greater than 0. This gives us 4. 4 minus 1, that gives us 3. 3 is greater than 0, so that works. Okay, so that works all these numbers right here. For 0, I'm going to say 0 squared minus 1 needs to be greater than 0. This is going to cancel out. We get 0 minus 1 is negative 1. That is not greater than 0, so it doesn't work. And we're going to use 3. We're going to say 3 squared minus 1. This gives us 9. 9 minus 1 gives us 8. 8 is greater than 0, so that one works as well. So now all you have to do is put your answer, your number line, in interval notation. Well, we know how to do this. Okay, here's a negative infinity. It'll be negative infinity to negative 1. It's an open circle, so it's parentheses. Now you just do this one. We start at 1 and we go to infinity. And again, we're using parentheses because they're open circles. Okay, that's it on that. The next problem that we're going to do is a difference quotient. Now, this really isn't hard. Okay, we're first going to do this part right here. Then we're going to do this part. Well, we're going to subtract this. There's no work to do right here. You already know what f of x is. In this case, f of x is this. So really what you're doing is you're just going to subtract this negative 3x plus 7 in the second step. That's all that's doing. Down here, on this one, you are just on the second step going to subtract this here from whatever you get in the first step, because that's the minus f of x. Okay? That's all there is to it. The hardest part is the very first step, in which we are going to say f of x plus h. Well, you already know what this is telling you. This is telling you that x is equal to x plus h. So wherever you see an x, you're going to replace it with x plus h. So in this case, you have negative 3 times whatever your x is, which is x plus h, plus 7. Finish that out, and we're going to get negative 3 times x plus 8. Oops, let's try to do that. I'm not just rewriting the problem. I'm going to actually simplify it. I'm going to say negative 3x minus 3h plus 7. Okay, that was all of step 1. Step 2 is what I was doing up here. I'm going to take my answer from step 1, which is this. That's my answer from here. Now I'm going to do this, minus my negative 3x plus 7. Okay, so make sure you change your sign when there's a minus sign out there. So you get negative 3x minus 3h plus 7. This is going to give me a positive 3x minus 7. Now, right here, these cancel, and I am left with just a negative 3h. That's step 2. Step 3 is you just divide your answer from step 2 and divide it by h. You take your step 2 of 3h and divide it by h, and in this case we end up with negative 3. Okay? We're going to do the exact same thing down here. The only thing here is that step 1 is the only place you really have to be careful about, because we have to say f of x plus h. Okay, this is what x is equal to. So wherever you see an x, you're going to replace it with x plus h. So you have 2 times whatever x is squared minus whatever x is plus 1. Okay, in this case, our x is x plus h. Now, this here is the hardest part for some of my students. Now, you can use FOIL and do x plus h times x plus h. Okay, I just know what that's going to give me, which is going to give me x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. That's what this gives us. Now I got to multiply by 2. Now, I'm going to subtract this whole thing. Every sign changes, so it's minus 8x minus h plus 1. I'm going to distribute. I get 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared minus the x minus the h plus 1. Okay, I had to do all that work just to find out what this gives me. Okay, now I'm going to subtract my original from it. I'm just going to be subtracting this, and what's going to happen? Okay, all my signs are going to change. So I'm taking this and I'm subtracting this from it, which changes all those signs. So I have minus 2xh plus x minus 1. Now watch what happens. These cancel, my x's cancel, and so do my 1's. And the last step, just like we did here, is we divide by h. So in the second step, we had 4xh plus 2h squared minus h, and all we do is divide everything by h. Here, your h's cancel, so you're left with 4x. Here, one of them, you subtract your exponents, so you end up with plus 2h. And negative h divided by h gives us negative 1. Oops, you can't see that. Sorry. I divided these h's, okay, and they canceled out, and I got 4x. Right here, I subtract my exponents, so 2 minus 1 gives me just 1, so it's 2h, and this gives me minus 1, negative 1. And that's it. I'll do another video in a little bit.